introduce you to Carolyn. Carolyn is the author of the book, Don't Call Me Inspirational. If you want to make friends with Carolyn, tell her how inspirational she's been. Carolyn's been active in the disability rights movement for a long time. She's a co-founder or been the chief executive of several organizations that provide counseling services to primarily to women with disabilities. It's been my good fortune to know Carolyn for a number of years. She's thoughtful, she's insightful, she's provocative, and if you haven't already done so, I know you will enjoy reading report. It will be for sale after the presentation. So without further ado, please welcome Carolyn Russo. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. I don't have to say it to this crowd, but well, anyhow, I speak with a disability accent. Usually I'm comprehensible, sometimes I'm not. So if I'm not comprehensible at some point, you need to scream at me. I respond very well to screaming. Will repeat. Because I'm really eager to have a communicate today. So what I'm going to do is read a few pieces, a number of pieces from my book. It's called Uncommon Inspirational. It's a playful feminist talk back. And then for me, we'll have what I consider the best part, which is I'd love to hear comments, questions, or whatever you have to say about what I read. Okay, and I'm at the age where I can't drive without glasses, so here we go. The first piece is called Close Encounter with the Clueless. What's wrong with you? You're so inspirational. Were you born that way? Are you sick? Is she sick? Is she, low or drunk? A bit too much Chardonnay, perhaps. You're so courageous. For me, I'd never leave my house. I wish I were dead. If you could choose or to be normal, even though you just are well, do you live with your mother? Do you work? Can you have sex? Have you ever had a boyfriend? Was he a cripple too? Or a saint? What a shame. Such a pretty girl. You're so brave. Our thing's better now for the handicapped. This piece is called Low Stare. I feel her eyes before I see them in the coffee shop around the corner. My second home, with its gray and white formica counter and rickety red stools that have horsehair stuffing peeking out, scratching my thighs when I'm foolish enough to wear a short skirt. Every morning, corn muffin and coffee. No need to order. George, the waiter, sees me meandering in and thrusts the muffin on the grill while he pours just the right amount of milk into my coffee cup. Knowing my shaky hand, a badge of cerebral palsy, has a poor track record, as likely to douse the counter as the coffee. I look up, my sense of comfort shattered by the face across the counter that wants me down, her eyes glaring, filled with fury and disdain, watching my involuntary movements, my limbs and facial muscles dancing without my consent, imposing on them her own fears and fantasies. Her lips contort in ways unknown mine, mumbling words of disgust to a non-existent neighbor on the next stool. George, always a good observer, gets between us, coffee pot in hand, engaging her in idle conversation to give me a moment to remember who I am. I overhear her longing to live in my area, Greenwich Village, and her conviction that she can never afford it. And I, a longtime resident, jumped in, offering her guidance about how to look for a cheap sublet, knowing she has little chance of success. Not in my neighborhood. The news that I am a native, with a run-stabilized apartment no less, transforms me from a freak to a friend. Not necessarily a gift, as I become a prisoner as her compensatory dancer about her mother who had a stroke and who she insists shakes worse than I do. And isn't it amazing that I can do so well, living on my own in a neighborhood most people would die for? As the telephone talk continues, I debate whether my role as educator has to begin at breakfast, when all I want to do is enjoy the sweetness of my corn muffins and shoot the breeze with George. This is called Driving High. When in my early 20s, my mother announced that she was giving me driving lessons. Our family doctor did not approve. He said he'd be afraid to be on the road with me, given my disability. So take the train, my mother suggested to him. I, too, had doubts about my driving, but these had little to do with my physical limitations. The image of myself as a driver was incongruous with some internal experience I had of myself, of needing to be cared for and directed, of not being able to be in the driver's seat of my own life. There was something comforting and familiar about being driven around, of being picked up and delivered. Some of my fondest childhood memories were adventures in which my mother was behind the wheel, taking me shopping to some exotic store or to an out-of-the-way restaurant. My preference for passenger status held fast, even though I was otherwise radically independent, steadily making my own life decisions regardless of what anyone thought. My mother recognized this incongruity or lapse in my independent self and sought to remedy it by insisting I become a driver. Although it would take her several years of coaxing to overcome my resistance, she was persistent. She understood the dangerous consequences of surrendering to the impulse to let others take charge. My mother was strong and feisty, and in many ways epitomized the independent woman. But when it came to major family decisions, she was often succumbed to being submissive and a good girl. My dad ruled. This is partly how she came to find herself living in unfamiliar territory, far from friends and family in Queens, New York. In this situation, learning how to drive, largely without the help or blessing of my father, became her salvation. I remember my mother's stories of how she conquered the gray 1951 Oldsmobile in our driveway. After my father went to work and we went to school, she would slowly back the car out, careful to avoid decapitating the red and yellow tulips around the edges of the lawn, and then practice right, left, and U-turns in the tree-lined neighborhood street now devoid of school children. As she described it, parallel parking was the trickiest to master without the help of an experienced pair of eyes to guide her. But she would pick her victims carefully. Already bruised cars, I wouldn't mind another notch on their fenders should she miscalculate as she maneuvered to park behind them. Our neighbors were far from pleased. I'll call the police if you don't stop driving without a license. The woman next door yelled, "I'll mind your own business, or I'll report your son for playing hooky," was my mother's immediate response. For her, taking on the police force seemed less daunting than being imprisoned in our less than stimulating neighborhood. She secured her license only after repeated tries, and then the world was hers. "Have you heard from Mom?" became my father's most frequently asked question, as he waited for her to show up hours behind schedule to cook his dinner and behave like his wife. After learning to drive, my mother was eager to teach others in need of liberation. I was her most resistant pupil. I finally succumbed to her wishes when faced with the challenge of renting a car in the British Isles during an upcoming vacation with a childhood friend. By then I was in my late 20s and living in my own place in Manhattan. My parents had left Queens for a new house in Long Island. It was a grandiose idea to think that I could drive on the left side of the road when I hadn't yet mastered the right. But I was still young and eager to please my license-lacking traveling companions who had lived in Scotland and promised to show all if I could do the driving. My mother seized her moment and showed up on my doorstep 2 or 3 times a week for almost 2 months to give me driving practice. I remember almost knocking a bus once and going the wrong way down a one-way street. But none of my misjudgment seemed to faze my mother. She showed fearlessness and perfect confidence that I could do this, I would do it, and I would like it. The promise of a delicious steak dinner at the end of each session and her unshakable will got me through those initial near disasters. As guilt replaced images of myself lying dead on the highway, I was surprised to discover an amazing sense of mastery and freedom emerging. Why, I could drive myself anywhere in the world, not dependent on anyone else's desires or whims. My fantasies started nationally as I imagined driving to New Mexico to eyeball the magnificent red, orange, and purple sunset while pretending to be Georgia O'Keeffe.